name is Hideout and welcome to the Pantheon, where we're in Innistrad and we've got a riveting installment for you today. It's about frogs. Grolnok the Omnivore, 4 mana for a 3/3 legendary creature, frog. Whenever a frog you control attacks, mill 3 cards. Excellent. We've always wanted the frog tribal commander, and here he is in all this gluttonous glory. Whenever a permanent card is put into your grave from your library, exile it with a croak counter on it. You may play lands and cast spells from among cards you own in exile with croak counters on them. So it's an excellent draw engine. It turns all of your self-mill into wonderful, wonderful draw, because those cards are going to be in exile, and so long as your commander's on the field, you can cast them and play them for as long as they're there. So, mega draw. We've got a lot of ancestral recall sort of things in this. We're going to be drawing 3 cards for 1 mana. Pretty nice. So, why don't we have a look at it? Well, first, why don't we have a look at the subscribe button? Please subscribe to my channel. We're going to be making videos like this for every single legendary creature, and this is just one frog in the bucket. But let's have a look at my top 5 for this specific frog. And in at number 5, we've got frogs. Because we want frogs, don't we? Everyone loves a frog. Plaxcaster Frogling is one of the best because it's a great way of protecting our commander. 3 mana for a 0/0 with Grass 3. So when it enters the battlefield, it comes in with 3 1/1 counters on it. Then whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you can put a 1/1 counter on it, so we can make our commander a nice little 4/4. And it curves wonderfully 3 into 4. And you can pay 2, target creature with a 1/1 counter on it gains Shroud until end of turn. So this will protect our commander from any sort of targeted removal. Our opponents go to destroy our commander. Well, we can pay 2, give it Shroud. You know, wonderful bit of technology. And it's also a frog, so when it attacks, we're going to be milling 3 cards or drawing 3 cards. Then the Spore Frog, 1 green for a frog. Sacrifice it, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn. Ooh, that's pretty goddamn good. Having a frog, I don't know, I can't work out a funny little pun for that. But for 1 mana, mill 3 cards whenever it attacks, and we can protect ourselves from any big swing. Then we've got the Omnivore, 4 mana for a 3/3 frog. Target creature becomes a 3/3 frog until end of turn, so we can turn any of our creatures into frogs. Although it is a bit counterintuitive because we're using a frog that could have attacked to turn something else into a frog, which then attacks. But it's just a great power move. And, you know, if our opponents have a big threatening commander, well, just turn it into a little frog until end of turn. It does keep all its abilities, but it's a frog. So we like frogs. Then Masked Vandal. There aren't many frogs in Magic, to be quite honest with you. So we've had to dip into some changelings. 2 mana for a 1/3 changeling. So it's all creature types. When it's the battlefield, you may exile a creature card from your graveyard. If you do, exile target artifact or enchantment an opponent control. So excellent use of something in the graveyard. Because yes, we're going to be exile things and casting from the exile, but I'd build this deck to really take advantage of the graveyard as well. So this is one of the ways we can do it with one of our frogs. So we can exile something and get a nice little effect. Then, you had to see it. Bloated Toad. This has been errata to be a frog, although frogs and toads are different things. 3 mana for a 2/2. Summon Toad with protection from blue. Ooh. So all those mono blue decks fear this guy. Real reason is here. Cycling for 2 mana. You can't cycle it from exile with a croak counter, because cycling you have to discard it from your hand. But it's got cycling in it. It's the best mechanic ever printed. Wonderful. Then there's got an Amaboid. I don't know what they say. Changeling. 2 mana, 1/1 changeling, so it's all creature types. Tap, target creature gains all creature types until end of turn. So again, we can turn anything into a frog. Or tap, target creature loses all creature types until end of turn. So we can stop our commander being a frog if we're, you know, going to mill ourselves to death or something ridiculous like that. So this is a cool card, just fits really well, and itself can attack. Then this is slightly different take on it. It's Bears of Litjara. 3 mana for a saga. Chapter 1, create a 2/2 blue shapeshifter creature token with changeling. So it's a frog. 3 mana 2/2 frog, I'll take it. Then chapter 2, any number of target shapeshifter creatures you control have base power and toughness 4/4. Forever. So that's really nice. Really nice. Those are frogs. And then number 3, choose up to 1 target creature or Planeswalker, each creature with power 4 or greater you control deals damage equal to its power to that permanent. So all of our shapeshifter frogs are then just going to rain hell upon some horrible, unsuspecting, disgusting creature. Or Planeswalker. We're not picky, we'll destroy anything. And that's just what frogs do. And in at number 4, we've got Deranged Assistant and ways to use the mill, because we want to be milling cards because it's essentially drawing cards, but all of these cards fit a different purpose in the deck. So Deranged Assistant, 2 mana for a 1/1, tap, mill a card to add a colour. So this is a mana dork that mills. It does everything. So we're going to be ramping and drawing cards using our commander, essentially, because those croak counters will be put on everything we mill. Similarly, we've got Milliken, 2 mana for a 0/1, construct, tap, mill a card, add a colourless. Really simple, really, really nice. It's just a wonderful card to play. And then I mentioned earlier Ancestral Recalls. Well, here is one of them. Thought Scout. 1 blue for an instant. Target player mills 2 cards. We're going to choose ourselves. Draw a card. So really simple spell. You know, you've probably seen it in Modern, but in this deck, it's phenomenal. 1 blue, we exile 2 cards. By milling them, we get to, cast them probably because, we're going to be playing mainly permanents in this deck. And then we get to draw a card to replace itself in our hand. This card does everything we want to do. Similarly, they've got the less played version. It's Mental Note. 1 blue for an instant. Put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. So you can't choose an opponent, but draw a card. It does exactly the same thing. Really, really wonderful card. Then we've got the Iceberg Cancrix. 2 mana for a 0/4 snow creature crab. Whenever another snow permanent enters the battlefield under your control, you may have target player put the top 2 cards of the library into their graveyard. So we're a 2-colour deck. We're going to be playing quite a lot of basic lands. I'd pay. I won't pay for anything. I'm not paying for anyone. I would play snow basic. So every single time a snow basic comes in, we can mill ourselves for 2, essentially drawing 2 cards. And remember, we can play lands from exile. So if we exile a couple of lands, well, we can play them later, and that might come into the strategy later. Then Hedron Crab, the original Crab Daddy. 1 blue for a 0/2 with landfall. So whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, target player puts the top 3 cards of his or her library into his graveyard. This costs 1 less, and it mills more for any land. This is phenomenal in the deck and will just draw you so many cards. Then, I love a cycling card. So Compelling Argument is a really cool card. 2 mana for a sorcery. Target player puts the top 5 cards of his or her library into his graveyard. So for 2 mana, well, we draw 5 basically, don't we? However, there is more. Say our commander isn't on the field, we can play a single blue to cycle it away. Whoosh, goodbye. This isn't, a permanent, so we can't put it into exile with a croak counter on it, but it works brilliantly in the deck. So I'd definitely play it, at least for the cycling benefits. Then that brings me on to number 3. At number 3, we've got Mass Mill. So the cool thing about this commander is, yes, we can play, little interesting ways of getting cards into exile, but let's just go big and also affect our opponents at the same time, because we could potentially mill our opponents out if, everything's symmetrical. And Mesmeric Orb is one of the best versions of this. 2 mana artifact, whenever an opponent becomes untapped, that opponent's controller mills a card. That includes lands, so when we're untapping all our lands in our untap step, well, we're going to be milling tons of cards. If our commander's on the field, exile them all. We're going to be drawing 20 cards a turn. It's amazing. So many croak counters, so little time. This card is just phenomenal, and our opponents will hate it. They'll be utterly miserable, they'll start crying, and then you'll croak them to death. And that brings me on to a couple of other great mill cards. Drowning Dreams is wonderful in this deck. It's a brand new card. 3 mana and X for an instant. Choose one if you control a commander, which we'd like to. You may cast a spell, you may choose both. Target player draws X cards. That'll be me. Then target player's mills twice X cards. So say you pump 10 mana into this, well, someone's going to be milling 20. That'll be me. So we're going to draw 10 cards, but then also draw 20 cards, in essence, with croak counters on them. Really powerful spell and works fantastically with our commander. Then this isn't going to help us, but while we're trying to mill our opponents out, Bruvak the Grandiloquent. God, I'm struggling with names today. 3 mana for a 1/4 human advisor. If an opponent would mill 1 or more cards, they mill twice that many cards instead. Just doubles your mill. If we're going on the offense with all the mill, this is amazing. Then the Binding of the Titans is just a great card and hints towards a little bit of what we're going to be doing later on. 2 mana, each player puts the top 3 cards of their library into their graveyard. Exile up to 2 target cards from a graveyard. For each creature card exiled this way, you gain 1 life. Return target creature or land card from your graveyard to your hand. So the important things for this about me, what? That's not a sentence, Adam. The important thing for me about this, there we go, got it, is we're going to be milling everyone, but our opponents generally, or at least in my play group, like to reanimate stuff. So having graveyard removal is incredibly important. So that middle chapter is really, really nice. Then let's have a look at some artifact-based mill as we're playing, you know, Mesmeric Orb. Emry, Lurker of the Lock, 3 mana for a 1/2. Spell costs 1 less cast for each artifact you control. So we'll bring green and blue. So you'd want to maybe run, you know, your green ramp spells and things like that, but they're not permanents. So I'd run a big artifact ramp package in this deck, and that goes well with Emry. Once you enter the battlefield, put the top 4 cards of your library into your graveyard. So there you go, we're exiling 4 cards with croak counters on them, and then we can cast them later. Tap, choose target artifact card from your graveyard. You may cast that card this turn. So there we go, another great use of Emry. We can bring back all the things we sacrificed, cast them from exile, sacrifice them, bring them back, things like that. Mindstone maybe. Then there's Grinding Station. 2 mana for an artifact. Tap, sacrifice an artifact. Target player puts the top 3 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. Whenever an artifact comes into play, you may untap Grinding Station. So a nice little engine there. Tap, you know, sacrifice a Soul Ring maybe. Well, you might want to, because you're going to be essentially drawing 3 cards. It's a great little engine that you could possibly churn out a ton of value with. Then the Shriekhorn. 1 mana for an artifact. Enter battlefield with 3 charge counters on it. Tap and remove a charge counter. Target player puts the top 2 cards of his or library into his or graveyard. 1 mana to potentially draw 6 cards. It's pretty goddamn good. And then you can sacrifice it to like an artifact thing, maybe Grinding Station, and cast it with Emry, bring it back. There's tons of great things you can do with artifacts. And that brings me on to number 2, because our commander allows us to cast things, but it also allows us to play lands. And lands would be a big focus of the deck for me, because most of your deck is lands. Let's be honest, you know, 30 to 40% of your deck is going to be lands. So you want to be getting them down as much as possible. And, you know, it's a bit of a stereotypical thing, green, blue, sort of mega ramp. But playing those lands and getting all that mana will allow you to win games. So Azusa is 3 mana for a 1/2. You may play 2 additional lands on each of your turns. Ooh, that's pretty goddamn good, to be honest. Getting those land drops down, you can just churn through the deck, draw cards. Wonderful, wonderful card. And this is all about extra land drops. And Right to Flourishing, yes, it helps your opponent. It allows them to draw an extra card, but we do as well, and they can play an extra land, but so can we. And this is all about breaking the parity of that. Yes, you can give your opponents a bit of an advantage, but we will take bigger advantage of it, and that's why it's so powerful. Although if you don't want to give your opponents anything, Dryad of the Elysian Grove is a 3 mana 2/3. Play an additional land on each of your turns. Lands you control have every basic land type in addition to those types. That's quite nice. Although we are playing green and blue, you know, we're not going to really use all the other colours, but you never know. Then there's Wayward Sawtooth, 3 mana 5/5 with Ascend, so you can get the City's Blessing and then it can attack and other stuff. You may play an additional land for each of your turns. When Wayward Sawtooth can't attack or block unless you have the City's Blessing. There you go. I just said that bit, but then I read it. Then there's Ancient Green Warden, because I talked earlier about things going to the graveyard. Yes, we can play them from exile, but we can also use our graveyard as a resource. So things like fetch lands, you know, you're going to play them from exile, crack them, they go to the graveyard. Then we can play lands from graveyards using the Green Warden. 6 mana for a 5/7 with a reach. If a land entering the battlefield causes an ability to trigger of a permanent, the ability triggers an additional time. So any landfall thing, you know, the crabs that we were talking about earlier, well, we can trigger them twice. Ooh, double mill. Then playing lands from your graveyard, Ramanap Excavator, 3 mana 2/3. Play an additional land from your graveyard. Nice and simple. Sadly, it's not a turtle. Just stick a shell on him. You know, Nagas are similar, aren't they? They're both reptilian in their sort of instincts. And then there's Oracle of Muldaia, 4 mana 2/2 Elf Shaman.
Play an additional land on each of your turns. Play with the top card of your library revealed. You may play lands from the top of your library. So there we go. We've completed the trinity. We can play lands from the top of our library, our hand, exile, graveyards. We can do everything. There's literally no way we can't play lands. I love it. Well, maybe there is. You can't play them from your opponent's hand. I don't think you'd ever be able to do that anyway. But let's move on to number 1. So in at number 1, we've got a card that works well with the graveyard and lands. It's Life from the Loam. 2 mana for a sorcery. Return up to 3 target land cards from your graveyard to your hand. So if we're playing a lot of fetch lands or utility lands that we're going to talk about, we can constantly reuse them using this. And then it has Dredge 3. If you would draw a card, instead, you may put exactly 3 cards from the top of your library into your graveyard. If you do, return this card from your graveyard to your hand. Otherwise, draw a card. So that's a mill for 3. So this is going to draw us 3 cards by replacing our draw. We get Life from the Loam back. We can cast it, get 3 lands back, play the 3 lands. It just spirals out of control. This card is made for this deck. Yes, it isn't a permanent. So if you exile it, well, you've mucked up a bit. But you need to get it into your graveyard. It's so good. Such a powerful card. I love it to pieces. And here are a couple of lands, cycling, that are great with this and with the deck. Lonely Sandbar, a land, enter the battlefield tapped. Tap for a blue and pay a blue to cycle it from your hand. So you can either draw a card or play a land. Wonderful, wonderful card. It's just so good with Life from the Loam. It's a great engine to just keep bringing it back. And the great thing is our opponents will probably have some graveyard removal. So Life from the Loam sitting there. We're waiting. It's their turn. Play a Bajuka Bog. We can respond by cycling Lonely Sandbar to dredge back our Life from the Loam and then continue on after it's been exiled. Really, really great card. Then Strip Mine. Not a fun card, but interaction is incredibly important. And sometimes lands are so powerful. You know, if someone's got a Glacial Chasm or something like that, they're just going to wall you out of the game. They're just going to sit there going, well, you can't deal damage. Lol. So with this, it's good to have some insurance. Or if you can play like 8 lands a turn from your graveyard, just strip mine everyone's lands. Just destroy them. Just destroy everything they hold dear. So a really great card. Ip.168, Rivulet. God, these names. Desert, taps for a colours, or you can pay 1 and tap for a blue. Pay 2 and tap, sacrifice a desert. Target player puts the top 4 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. Potentially 2 mana and tap and sacrifice this to draw 4 cards. Whew. That's not bad. And if we can play it from our graveyard again, we can do it again. Oh, just constantly churning through the deck. And now, one of my favourite combinations, Thespian Stage and Dark Depths. I love this. I built a legacy deck and then never played it because I love this combination so much. Thespian Stage, a land, taps for a course. Pay 2, tap it. Becomes a copy of target land, except it has this ability. Okay, what are we going to make it a copy of? Dark Depths, that's the one. Legendary Snow Land. Hey, Snow Land, it fits with the snow theme. It enters the battlefield, 10 ice counters on it. Pay 3, remove an ice counter from it. When it has no ice counters on it, sacrifice it. If you do, create a Marit Large 2020 black avatar creature token with flying and indestructible. Yes, that's exactly what I want to see. How does this work? Well, what we're going to do is make Thespian Stage a copy of Dark Depths. So, it becomes a copy. The legendary rule kicks in. We sacrifice the original Dark Depths with all of the counters on it. Then, Thespian Stage is a Dark Depths. It's just sitting there going, oh, what's going on here? But it has no ice counters on it. So, we sacrifice it and we get the Marit Lage. Wonderful. Absolutely lovely. I love a massive 2020 flyer. Then the final land I've got for you is Sequestered Stash. A land taps for a colours, but you can pay 4, tap it, sacrifice it, put the top 5 cards of your library into your graveyard. Then you may put an artifact card from your graveyard on top of your library. So this plays into the artifact sort of sub-theme I was talking about earlier. Mills you for 5 cards, or, you know, if we want to get technical, draws you 5 cards, and then sets you up with a wonderful draw of the artifact next turn. Amazing card that works with every single aspect of this deck. And those are my top 5 selections for the big Frogman. Is he as big as the other frog? The green-black one? Oh god, what's his name? The Gitrog Monster, that's it. He's from Innistrad as well. I think he's slightly larger. You'd probably eat him. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please do like, comment, subscribe, and send me a picture of something. And I'll see you soon. Bye.